to the Bernie folks out there who are considering supporting this guy. Do you understand what a colossal phony and fraud this guy is? I want to get to the more substance-based arguments and the lack of substance-based arguments. So let's go to video number one. This, now, for those of you long-timers, Dan Bongino show loyalists, the Judys of the world, who has always been with us from the beginning. I mean, the people who were with us when Joe and I were doing the show in my Severna Park basement, we had 30 listeners.
Yeah.
You know, I have been furious about this silly, stupid argument forever. Bernie Sanders continues to make that we need to be more like Denmark. Denmark is a democratic socialist country, and we need to be more like Denmark. Denmark is not socialist. For the 6,426th time, Denmark is not socialist. Listen to Bernie again spout this utter nonsense about Denmark being a democratic socialist country. And I will provide the evidence afterwards that he's lying to you. Stop being a sucker for this guy. Check this out.
Let's talk about democratic socialism, not communism, Mr. Bloomberg. That's a cheap shot. Let's talk about democratic. Let's talk about what goes on in countries like Denmark, where Pete correctly pointed out they have a much higher quality of life in many respects than we do. What are we talking about?
Oh, my gosh.
What are you
Quick.
talking about, Bernie?
Time out, Joe. Somebody notify the Danes. Notify the Danes that they're socialists. Somebody quickly. Because as I used to put out often on the show, and I will now do it again, and it will be in my show notes today. Ladies and gentlemen, this article I'm about to flash on the screen in a moment. Keep this handy on your browser. Print it, own it, love it, know how to Google it. Keep it handy on your iPhone, your Android, whatever you have right away. This article by Investors Business Daily from 2015. It'll be in the show notes again today. Headline: Denmark tells Bernie Sanders it's had enough of his socialist slurs. Somebody should tell the Danes that they're socialist because they apparently object to this characterization. Why? Because they're not socialist. They're not democratic socialist. There's no such thing as that. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
No.
They are a market economy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lars. Ladies and gentlemen, read that article. You're killing me. Read the article. They have been saying since 2015, since Bernie ran the first time, Lars Rasmussen, their former leader, we are not a socialist country. Stop slandering us. They're a market economy. Now, granted, there are heavy taxes. There's a heavy tax burden. But heavy taxes and big government, although bad ideas, ladies and gentlemen, are not socialism. This is not a small debate. I'm really genuinely sorry that this show and very few others have made this distinction to you if you are out there and you are still confused. For the great conservatives and liberty lovers in my audience, I give you this stuff so you have the ammo to debate. To the liberals out there who are still confused, please let me educate you for a moment. I'm not kidding. I'm not trying to be a jerk. You don't know what you're talking about. Denmark and many of the Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Norway, Finland, others, a lot of European countries as well, do have big government models with heavy taxation and a lot of government services. That is not socialism. It is not democratic socialism. The definition of socialism is clear as day. It is when the government owns and controls the means of production with the weapon of force at its back. In other words, the factories, the supermarkets, the farms, the food production, the healthcare system is owned and controlled by the government.
Right.
Under penalty of force. That is not what Denmark is. It is a free market economy. That's it.
Right.
Denmark is not socialist. Stop humiliating yourself. Socialism is not big government and heavy taxes when there is still a functioning free market. You can have government that pays for health care with doctors and hospitals who are not forced to work for the government. They can volunteer to work for the government, but they're not forced to do it. If they're forced to work for the government, like in Cuba, North Korea, and elsewhere, that would be socialism, the Soviet Union. If a doctor can choose to provide services in a market economy or can choose to work for a government salary, we have that here. You can take Medicaid patients. You don't have to take Medicaid patients. It's as simple as that. Where the turn to socialism would happen is if you were then forced to work for the government and the government only. That would be fully socialized medicine. You have no choice. It would be illegal to provide medical services to anyone for a price. Private insurance would be banned.
Right.
And in some places that does happen. That would be a socialized healthcare system. But Bernie Sanders has no idea what socialism is. Listen to this cut here where he totally, and I think intentionally, botches it again to confuse you about what socialism is and isn't. Check this out.
We are living in many ways in a socialist society right now. Problem is, as Dr. Martin Luther King reminded us, we have socialism for the very rich, rugged individualism for the poor.
Wait a second.
Let me finish. When Donald Trump gets $800 million in tax breaks and subsidies to build luxury condominiums, that's socialism for the rich. When Walmart, we have to subsidize Walmart's workers who are on Medicaid and food stamps because the wealthiest family in America pays starvation wages. That's socialism for the rich.
Holy Moses, there's so much disinformation in there. This guy's, we got to break this down piece by piece. Let's address number one. Because again, the idiocy there is so profound. If you don't take it point by point, you'll get lost in the morass of stupid. Number one, Bernie Sanders. Donald Trump's tax breaks. This is socialism. Folks, Donald Trump was a real estate developer in one of the most liberal cities on the planet, New York. New York City, which is approximately, 70% Democrat, 30% radical Democrat? So, Bernie, you're suggesting that the citizens of New York that voted for Democrats, who then instituted tax laws that may have benefited a real estate developer who built buildings in New York City and contributed to the business environment there. You're suggesting that's socialism? Folks, do you understand the stupid there? Free market, buildings, private developer, using laws voted on by Democrats. Yep, that's socialism. He claims he is a socialist, but he is not a socialist in his personal life. He only wants socialism for you. And yes, he has been consistent on that. Consistently fraudulent. Authentic? No, authentic means what he's saying aligns with his own personal life in an air of authenticity. That's not what Bernie does. He's a millionaire with 3 homes. Which flows perfectly, by the way, unintendedly, and segues nicely into cut number 3.
Well done.
Unintentionally, of course, but the show just goes where it goes. Here's Nanny Bloomberg nailing Sanders in what I wish someone would have said years ago to this total phony, inauthentic fraud. So you're a socialist who believes in the government control of wealth and the means of production. In other words, for the liberal simpletons out there who don't understand what socialism means, the accumulation of private free market wealth is prohibited in a socialist system. The government controls the means of production, the businesses, and the wealth generated from them. That is what socialism is. Crack a book sometime. So if Bernie believes this, and this works and will lead to a better tomorrow, socialism, and the prohibition on private wealth, that's what socialism is, then why is Bernie not practicing socialism himself? Again, because he's a colossal tier 1 level inauthentic fraud. Listen to Bloomberg call him out on this. Check out this gem.
What a wonderful country we have. The best known socialist in the country happens to be a millionaire with 3 houses. What I miss here?
Well, you'll miss that I work in Washington, House 1.
That's the first problem.
Live in Burlington, House 2.
That's good.
And like thousands of other Vermonters, I do have a summer camp.
Oh, my God. Folks, come on. I'm not even messing. I know, listen, this show, we go in a lot of different directions. It's an emotional roller coaster, ups and downs, sarcasm, wit, funny. Sometimes it's sad. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we celebrate. Sometimes we cheer. I'm being deadly serious as a heart attack here. To the Bernie folks out there who are considering supporting this guy, do you understand what a colossal phony and fraud this guy is? Did you ever notice every wealthy socialist who decries the accumulation of personal private wealth, who themselves have gotten wealthy, every single one of them always has an excuse accumulation the size of a phone book in New York City? There's always an excuse for it.
Yep.
Bloomberg, good for Bloomberg, calling him out. Listen, you know I'm not a fan. We'll get to Bloomberg in a little while, too. I got a lot on Bloomberg. But good for him. At least Bloomberg created a company that provided a service people valued and were willing to pay for, a service they valued because those companies who use Bloomberg Financial Services and their financial information service believed that company would be better off using that service than without it. And they were willing to compensate Bloomberg because of it. What has Bernie produced? Nothing.
You just heard The Dan Bongino Show. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud. And follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 @DBongino.